The drama begins with James lying on the bed in critical condition. His wife, Amy, is sitting beside him, thinking to herself, "The poison I mixed in your drink was bound to make you like this." A lawyer enters the room with a file in his hand and tells Amy, "The papers you had prepared are ready. Get your husband's signature or thumbprint so that all the property becomes yours." James, struggling to speak, asks, "What about my family? If she gets all the property, what will happen to my brother and sister?" Amy leans closer and says, "Stop talking nonsense and do what you need to do." She then takes the signed papers from him. The lawyer, satisfied, says, "My work here is done. I'll be leaving now." Amy turns to James and says, "Ever since you met me in this life, this is what happened to you. In your next life, don't make the mistake of meeting me again, or I'll make sure you go through this all over again." She then adds, "Oh, I almost forgot. Your brother and sister, who were on their way to meet you, were in a car. No one knows what happened to it." Hearing this, James looks at her helplessly, unable to do anything due to his condition. Amy walks away, laughing, but suddenly, there is a twist. A girl is watching this drama on her phone. She gets so immersed in it that she starts speaking aloud, "Amy, how can you be so cruel? How can you do this to your husband?" Then she mutters to herself, "If I were in this drama, I would make sure Amy got what she deserved." Emma, as she realizes what she is thinking, shakes her head and says, "I must be going crazy. How can I even think like this?" She then snaps her fingers and says, "If only I could enter this drama through the screen." In an instant, Emma finds herself inside the drama, standing in James's house. Confused, she looks around and says, "Where am I? This place looks familiar." Then she remembers. This is the same place from the drama I was watching on my phone. She snaps her fingers again, hoping to return, but nothing changes. Panicked, she clasps her hands together and prays, "Just give me a chance to change my appearance. I wanted to enter as a gangster so I could teach Amy a lesson, but now everything is upside down." Just then, a housemaid rushes in, grabs Emma's arm, and says, "Come quickly, the master has arrived." All the servants line up. Some take his coat, others take his watch. Emma, still disoriented, struggles to understand what is happening. James looks around and asks, "Despite having so many servants, why do you insist on doing these small tasks?" Amy smiles and replies, "Because the drink I prepare with lemon is something no servant can make. It's my secret." She hands him the drink. Emma, standing nearby, watches in horror. She mutters under her breath, "Of course, because you've mixed poison in it." Amy nods and says, "Go ahead and drink it. In a few days, you'll be in the hospital anyway." Here, we see that all the thoughts Emma had in her mind were somehow audible to James. He looks around in surprise and asks, "Who is speaking?" Amy quickly responds, "What has happened to you? There is some misunderstanding. No one is talking here." Emma starts thinking again. She tells herself, "If he dies, how will I get this high salary? After his death, the entire company will belong to Amy." Once again, James hears everything. Amy notices that he is not drinking his lemon water, so she urges him, "Drink it." Emma, realizing the danger, thinks to herself, "I have to spill his drink." She pretends to accidentally spill it, but only a little water falls on James's hand. James looks at her and asks, "What are you doing?" Emma quickly responds, "I am stopping you from drinking because you haven't eaten anything since morning. Drinking lemon water on an empty stomach can cause pain. I think you should drink plain water instead." Amy, getting irritated, scolds Emma, "What are you doing here? The water has spilled everywhere, and instead of cleaning it, you are just standing here talking." She snatches the glass from James's hand and says, "I will make a fresh one and bring it." Amy starts thinking again. A little bit of it was left in the glass. "I will pour it into another cup and bring it back." Meanwhile, Emma begins cleaning the spilled lemon water near James. As James watches her, a thought crosses his mind. Am I really hearing her thoughts? She just thought about the poison in my lemon water. What does this mean? James calls out to Emma, but instead, he mistakenly calls her Lucy. Since that is not her name. She does not respond. A maid standing nearby signals to her. Confused, Emma turns to another maid and asks, "Am I Lucy?" The maids around her nod in agreement. Emma is stunned. My identity has changed here, she thinks. Not only have they made me a maid, but now they are calling me Lucy. James notices Emma's reaction and thinks to himself, strange things have been happening since this morning. At that moment, Amy returns with the new drink and hands it to James. Drink it quickly, she says. There is no point in delaying. James is about to take a sip when Emma stops him. Amy gets angry and scolds her. Why don't you go and do your work? James looks at Emma, who is subtly signaling him not to drink it. Understanding her warning, James puts the drink aside and says, I'm not feeling thirsty anyway. Amy is visibly displeased, while James starts thinking, I don't know what is going on, but I need to be careful. Emma starts thinking again. According to the drama I watched, she will try to give him this drink 3 or 4 more times. If he drinks it again, he will be completely paralyzed. This evil woman, Amy, will succeed in her plan. But I know everything that is going to happen in this story. I am the only one who can stop it. The final event happens in 1 month. Before that, I have to change James's fate, she promises herself. I will do this. James, still able to hear Emma's thoughts, grows even more curious. I need to find out what all of this means, he thinks. Why am I able to hear her voice? At this point in the drama, Emma, now known as Lucy, finds herself in another strange moment. James looks at her and says, yes, it will be exactly as you want. Emma begins thinking again about Amy. Now this cunning woman will start talking about how many luxurious cars will come to receive her, how their wedding party will be in a grand hotel, and how the decorations will be filled with the finest flowers. Right after she thinks this, Amy says the exact same things to James. James is shocked. Once again, he realizes he can hear Emma's thoughts. Emma, on the other hand, starts making faces in reaction to Amy's words. Amy notices and questions her. Why are you standing here making such a face after listening to me? Then, turning to Emma, she asks, what is your name? Thinking carefully, Emma replies, my name is Lucy. Amy Okay, now go from here. Emma then says, ma'am, you must be mistaken. Amy looks at her sternly and says, we don't pay you to stand around and make faces. Go and do your work. Emma begins thinking again. Do you even have the money to pay me? Mr. James is the one who pays the servants. You're too young to talk to me like this. Amy, getting irritated, turns to James and says, see? Look how she is staring at me. James, sensing the tension, steps in. Okay, that's enough. Stop arguing. Then he adds, I'm leaving now. I will come back tomorrow. If you need anything, let me know. But Amy kept pointing at Emma. She said, how can a maid talk to me like that? Didn't you see how she was staring at me? She then turned to James and said, she can't work here at all. Hearing this, Emma's temper rose, and she started working with a napkin in her hand. Amy was very pleased with herself, but James stopped her and said, Miss Lucy, now that you have left your job as a maid in my house, the position of my personal secretary is vacant. Come to my office tomorrow morning, and I will appoint you as my personal secretary. Emma's expression changed completely. Amy, furious at what she had just heard, turned to James and said, the person I fired, how can you give her a job? I don't understand. Are you helping me, or are you against me? James, hearing this, grew concerned. Meanwhile, Emma was so amused by the situation that she started laughing out loud. Ignoring Amy, James turned to Emma and said, you may leave now. We will meet tomorrow at the office. Emma started thinking again. He's not as foolish in reality as he seemed in the drama. James, deep in thought, realized something. I just gave her a job, but I didn't mention the salary. James then asked, how much salary do you expect? Emma replied, we will discuss all of that tomorrow at the office. James nodded and said, all right, be there early. With that, he left. Emma, overjoyed, started dancing happily. The next morning, Emma arrived at James's office, dressed as a secretary. When James saw her, he asked, can you drive? Before Emma could respond, he walked away, saying, you have been hired as a driver for our company. Emma, confused, looked at herself and followed James, saying, yes, I have very good driving skills. She stepped outside the office and asked, which car should I drive? I don't see any cars here. James made a quick phone call and said, Amy took the car. Once again, Emma got lost in her thoughts. Wow. I'm a driver now. I get to sit in big cars. James overheard her thoughts and was surprised. Emma was thinking about Amy. Maybe she'll get into an accident with that car. James, hearing this, grew concerned. Meanwhile, Emma was so amused by the situation that she started laughing out loud. James turned to one of his office workers and asked, how long have I been standing here? The office worker started making excuses. Emma thought to herself, what is he saying? He works for Amy because she pays him to do her work at the office. Once again, James heard her thoughts. He immediately dismissed the office worker and turned to Emma. Emma said, I am your driver, and your company car will take some time to arrive. Since you seem to be in a hurry, I will arrange a vehicle for you. She left, and shortly after, she appeared with a scooter. James, surprised, asked, What is this? An electric scooter. Emma looked at him and said, Do you want to go or not? She tossed a helmet to him and said, Hurry up. James had barely settled when Emma suddenly sped off. She was driving so fast that she collided with a car. Both Emma and James fell off the scooter. Emma quickly turned to James and asked, Boss, are you okay? Let me take you to the hospital. The driver of the car they had hit stepped out and said, You seem fine, but look at my car. Emma turned to James and said, This looks like the same car you were talking about. Emma started thinking again. I can't stop laughing. I crashed into his car while he was sitting behind me. James stepped forward to speak to the car owner, but as soon as the man heard him, he slapped James across the face. Emma was shocked. She quickly pulled James aside and pointed at the car. Have you ever seen such a car? Do you even know how expensive it is? The man ignored her and said, Forget about the car. Look at its number plate. You can't even afford the number on it, it's a VIP number. He then turned back to James and said, Hurry up and give me 50,000. Emma protested, What are you doing? How can you just hit someone like that? Do you even know who he is? The man raised his hand to hit Emma too, but James stopped him. The man continued, Give me the money now, or I won't let you leave. Emma stood her ground. Why should he pay for his own thing? The man scoffed. Your head must be full of nonsense. You fell down, and now your brain isn't working properly. Emma turned to James. You should prove who you are. James made a phone call. I need my car here within 10 minutes. After disconnecting the call, he turned to the man and said, First, tell me where you got this car from. The man responded, I've told you many times. This car is mine. I bought it. James said, I am asking you for the last time. Tell me where you got this car from. I am giving you one chance to tell me everything truthfully. Just then, the person who was driving the car received a phone call. He answered, I had gone out of town. It will take me 3 hours to come back. He then continued, Don't be angry. I will return right away. As he spoke, he was also kissing over the phone. Emma noticed this and found it strange. Then, it was revealed that the person he was talking to was none other than James's fiancée, Amy. She was very angry and said, Don't do anything wrong. Just bring the car straight to me. He explained the whole situation to her, and she replied, Okay, I will come there. Don't do anything foolish until I arrive, or I will never forgive you. After the call ended, the man who had brought the car started kicking them. Emma stepped in front and nearly fell, but James caught her just in time. Their eyes met for a moment, and they had a brief romantic moment. James then said, Emma, you are absolutely crazy. Emma looked at him and said, I just don't want you to get hurt again. James replied, What you're doing is far beyond what your salary covers. There is no need for you to go to such lengths for such a low salary, but Emma reassured him, Don't worry about that at all. I am going to go very far. The man once again demanded payment. James responded, It was my car that got hit, and you expect me to pay you? This is ridiculous, the man said. My partner needs this car as soon as possible. Emma turned to James and said, He is blackmailing you, and this is your car. You are the boss of such a big company. How can you let this fool blackmail you? James looked at her and said, Look at the condition I am in right now. Emma immediately apologized. I'm sorry. James shook his head. Don't say sorry to me. This isn't your fault. But in this state, who would believe that I am the boss of a big company? That's why I am handling this situation this way, the man in front of them then said. My girlfriend is about to arrive. She will handle all of you. Emma was about to say something, but James stopped her. Just then, Amy arrived. When she saw her boyfriend standing there, she rushed to him. Lee, are you okay? She asked while checking him for injuries. She then asked angrily, Who dared to hurt us? Let me see who did this. I will not spare them today. James turned to face her and said, Go ahead, take your revenge. Amy's expression changed immediately. Emma, watching everything, thought to herself, Now the real fun will begin. Amy walked up to James and asked, Are you okay? Emma whispered to James, Now let's see what she does. James then said to Amy, You seem more worried about him than me. Amy quickly made an excuse, Oh, he is my brother. He insisted on borrowing your car, James raised an eyebrow. He is your brother, yet he calls you baby? Do you think I am blind? Vicky, who was standing nearby, interrupted. Who was he to question us like this? Amy saw that the situation was getting worse, so she suddenly slapped Vicky across the face. Kneel down and apologize to him, she ordered. Vicky, shocked, said, "How dare you hit me?" Lee, seeing the tension, added, "Do you even know who we are?" James had had enough. "Stop it now. There is no need to put on an act in front of me. Besides, your acting skills are terrible." He then continued, "My bodyguard Henry has arrived, and I am leaving." When Emma heard Henry's name, she recalled a story where Chang's bodyguard, Henry, was described as very skilled. She looked excited and ran to meet him. Amy stopped her and asked, "Where do you think you're going?" Henry walked up and said, "Boss, I will take you home." Just then, James collapsed to the ground. He soon regained consciousness and asked Emma, "Miss Lucy, what happened to me?" Emma looked at him seriously and said, "I need a favor from you. Please stop calling me Lucy." "I don't want to be known by that name." Then, she added, "poison is spreading through your body. It has started affecting your heart. If you continue to be given poison like this, you will soon become paralyzed. You may even need a wheelchair to walk." James, in shock, asked, "Who could have poisoned me?" Emma did not know what to say. James started thinking, "Does Emma believe that my fiancé is poisoning me? Could this be true?" He then looked around the hospital room and realized, this is not a hospital under our control. He turned to Emma and asked, "Where have you brought me?" "This hospital is not under our company," Emma replied. "Are you in your right mind? You have been going to your hospital for checkups for so many days. And yet no one told you that you were being poisoned. Everyone there is working together." James thought for a moment and then asked, "You mean the hospital staff also knew that I was being poisoned?" Emma said, "Now you have understood everything correctly." James tried to sit up, and Emma helped him. He looked at her and asked, "But how do you know all this?" Emma hesitated and quickly made an excuse. "I just figured it out." In her mind, she thought, "How can I tell you about the drama? You will think I am completely mad." James looked at her and said, "It's okay. Thank you for what you did for me." Emma smiled and said, "There is no need for thanks." James then told her, "From today, your salary will be doubled." Emma happily held his hand and said, "You are a fantastic boss." Then she reminded him, "Your engagement party with Amy is next month." James sighed. "I need to think about this. I will tell Amy that I need some time. I will have to delay it." Then he added, "I understand who is trying to harm me. To find out who is working with them, I will need to be careful." Emma nodded. "Yes, you are absolutely right." She then started massaging James and said, "Since you doubled my salary, you should also arrange a house for me." James smiled and said, "Okay, I will arrange a house for you." He was about to call someone when Emma stopped him. She said, "To uncover everything, I need to stay in the servants' quarters at your house." James agreed. Before leaving, Emma told him, "Do not come home until the doctor discharges you." Meanwhile, Amy was seen beating one of her servants. All the other servants stood nearby, watching. Amy shouted, "You stole my necklace. Admit it, or I will call the police. You will have to go to jail." The servant, in pain, pleaded, "I did not steal your necklace. I am telling the truth." Amy accused, "You did this under Lucy's instructions, didn't you? If you admit it, I will let you go." The servant firmly refused and said, "Even Lucy never asked me to do anything like this." Amy grabbed the servant's face and said, "Then you will go to jail alone." But the servant stood her ground. "No matter what you do, I will not accept this lie. You are jealous of Lucy, and that is why you are treating me like this." Amy clapped her hands mockingly. "Oh really?" She then started hitting the servant again and ordered another servant, hit her. Just as the other servant raised a hand under Amy's command, Emma arrived. She rushed forward, stopped the servant, and lifted the injured one. Seeing the servant's condition, she said, "You will end up killing them. We need to take them to the hospital immediately." Amy coldly replied, "Return my necklace before leaving." Emma grabbed Amy's face and said, "You have completely lost your mind. Someone is seriously hurt, and all you care about is your necklace. You know there has been no theft. You cannot raise your hand against them like this. It is illegal to accuse someone without proof." Then Emma added, "These people don't know the law, but I do because I am a graduate. I know everything." Amy raised her hand to slap Emma, but Emma caught her hand. She turned to the other servants and ordered, "Take the injured servant to the hospital immediately." Then, in one swift motion, Emma slapped Amy across the face. She said, "Do not show this behavior in front of me again." Emma continued, "Mr. James may not know anything, but I know everything about you. I have all the proof of what you have been doing to him. I will not hesitate to take it to the police." Amy looked shaken by Emma's words, but she still said, "You are just a servant, and you dare talk to me like this." Emma looked at her sternly. "Don't talk to me about this. You know very well that you are Mr. James's driver's daughter. You got this position by manipulating him. You should be grateful to him for the rest of your life, but instead, you are ungrateful." Amy shouted, "Enough. Pack your things and leave this house today. I don't want to see you here after today." Emma pointed to her own head and asked, "Is something wrong with you?" Amy glared and said, "Do you really think you can stay here without my permission? If I tell James, he will throw you out." Emma smirked and said, "You will soon find out what is going to happen to you." As she turned to leave, she suddenly stopped, looked back, and said, "One more thing, stop poisoning people. Your time is running out. Mr. James had to go to the hospital today, and now he knows everything." Amy's eyes widened in shock. "How did he find out?" She quickly went to her father and told him, "James is starting to suspect us." Her father became angry and said, "What have you done now? I worked so hard to reach this position. Don't let your foolishness ruin everything." Amy sighed. "Stop scolding me. Just tell me what to do now." Her father leaned in and whispered something in her ear. Amy's face lit up, and she said, "Yes, Dad, you are absolutely right. This plan will definitely work." Next, we see James sitting in his office when his brother walks in. James looked surprised. "When did you come back?" His brother smiled and said, "Just now." "How was Turkey?" James's brother replied, "Turkey is a beautiful place. You should visit sometime." Emma arrived with a file in her hand. John saw Emma and asked his brother, "Who is this?" Seeing John, Emma started thinking, "This is his younger brother. He looks just like I saw in the story. He is even better than James. At least he is not foolish like his brother, who is involved with a useless woman." James heard Emma's thoughts and responded, "This is my secretary. Her name is Lucy." John then told James, "I have come here only for your marriage. Don't worry about anything. I will handle everything. It will be the biggest and grandest party in the city." Emma thought to herself, "Oh dear, you don't even know her real face. She is dangerous and planning something terrible. If nothing is done on time, she will ruin both James and his younger brother." James stood up and said, "I have postponed my engagement for a few days." John was surprised and asked, "Why?" James replied, "We will talk about this later. If you are free tonight, let's have dinner together." John smiled and said, "I am always free for you." As John left, Amy arrived with some papers in her hand, determined to execute the plan her father had told her. She entered James's office, where Emma was discussing some documents with him. Amy smiled and said, "I have good news for you." James took the papers from her and asked, "Are you pregnant?" Amy nodded and said, "Yes, I went to the hospital for a checkup because I was feeling uneasy. That's when I found out." Emma teased James, "Are you sure this child is yours?" She then looked at Amy and asked, "Who was in James's car that day?" Amy quickly silenced Emma and said, "What are you talking about? That was my brother. You know that." She held James's hand and said, "My relationship is only with James." Emma thought to herself, in the story, Amy could never get pregnant because of multiple miscarriages. She became infertile. How can I prove the truth? She decided to find a way to get Amy to take a pregnancy test so the truth would be revealed. James, who could hear Emma's thoughts, also doubted the papers. He examined them carefully. Amy noticed his hesitation and said, "James, don't you trust me? We can get a paternity test done." James thought for a moment and then said, "There's no need for that." "I trust you." Amy asked, "When is our engagement party?" "My family and friends keep asking," James replied. "We should wait until the baby is born." Amy's eyes widened in shock, but she forced a smile and said, "As you wish." She left the office, and as she walked out, John greeted her, but she ignored him completely. Later, Emma was playing a game on her phone, thinking, "I know what is going to happen to this family, yet I am unable to do anything. I have to do something." Meanwhile, James's brother came to see him, visibly angry. He confronted James, "How could you do this to us? You got all the property registered in your name and didn't give us a share." James replied, "You are mistaken. Someone is misleading you. In time, you will understand everything." His brother left angrily, leaving James feeling troubled. He called Emma. Emma, still playing her game, saw the call and sighed, "Now he's calling me too?" She picked up and asked, "Why are you calling me now?" James simply said, Come to the lake, Emma frowned. Why the lake? Fine, you are my boss, so I have to come. Send a taxi for me. After hanging up, Emma muttered, You act just like my father. Emma arrived at the lake and called James. Tell me, why did you call me here? James looked at the water and said, I don't like the atmosphere around me. I feel like everyone around me is wearing a mask. Their real faces are different. Emma listened carefully. James continued, I just hope what I am thinking isn't true. Emma replied, The world is black and white. Some people are good, and some people are bad. I am white, which means I am good. But my tongue is pink. James laughed at her joke. Emma added, Not everyone around you is bad. Some people love you, like your younger brother. He cares for you. Don't change your goodness because of others. James smiled and said, No one has ever explained things to me this way. You are very smart, and pretty too. Emma quickly replied, Don't try to flatter me and cut my salary. My advice isn't free. I want a bonus, James laughed. I thought you were just being kind to me. Emma shook her head. I am not kind at all, James smirked. You are also a bit foolish. Talking about bonuses? I just want to make you the richest woman in the world. If you become my wife, you will have all the money you could ever want. Emma's eyes widened. Are you serious? That means I will have unlimited money for a lifetime, James nodded. Yes, a lot of money. Emma was surprised. Really? Then when are we doing this? James laughed. Soon. The next day, James was at the office, and his bodyguard, Henry, stood nearby. James handed him some papers and said, Find out the truth about these papers. Henry nodded. I will get this done soon, sir. Emma walked in and asked, What's next? James smiled. We are going shopping. Emma raised an eyebrow. Shopping? James nodded. Yes, I want to buy a dress for you. After buying the dress, James told Emma to try it on. When she came out wearing it, James couldn't take his eyes off her. The store assistant complimented her. Ma'am, this dress fits you perfectly. It was specially designed for you. Just then, Amy arrived with James's sister, Ava. Seeing Emma in the dress, Amy got furious. Do you even know how expensive this dress is? You ruined it by wearing it. She started pulling at Emma's dress. The store assistant stepped in. If you behave this way, I will call security. James arrived and saw what was happening. He turned to Amy and said, What are you doing? Then, without warning, he slapped Amy across the face. Apologize to Emma. Amy held her cheek in shock. You hit me over her? Do you know who I am? She is nothing compared to me. James slapped her again and said, I said, apologize. Amy, furious but scared, mumbled, Sorry. James said, No one heard you. Say it louder. Amy clenched her fists and said loudly, I am sorry. Then she stormed out of the store. James turned to Emma with concern. Are you okay? Emma crossed her arms. If she does this again, I will deal with her myself. The store assistant chuckled and said, Her makeup is ruined. She needs a touch-up. James called his household staff and said, Amy is coming home. Make sure she doesn't touch anything in the house. It would be better if her belongings were given to her outside the house because she might try to take away the jewelry and cash if she comes inside. We see that all the servants are standing outside the house. Amy says, Take your clothes and go away from here. But Amy asks them, What are you doing to me? A worker from the front says, Sir has ordered that you should not be allowed to enter the house, so it would be better if you leave from here. Amy refuses to leave and approaches the servant, saying, It seems you have lost your mind. That's why you are talking like this. You need to be taught a lesson. She starts hitting him, but another servant stops her and pushes her back. You should leave from here, it will be better for you. If you do not listen to us, we will call security. Amy struggles to free herself, but the servant holds her firmly and says, You have already done enough damage, and now it is time for your punishment. She is then pushed forcefully, making her fall to the ground. Another servant says, You should never compare yourself to Lucy. You are nothing in front of her. The other servants walk back inside the house, saying, This was bound to happen to her. Once again, Amy goes to her father, shouting at him. Your idea didn't work at all. There was a misunderstanding between me and James, her father says. What have I not done for this company? All my efforts have gone to waste. Everything was going according to plan, but now everything has fallen apart, Amy yells. Lucy has done all this, her father asks. Who is this Lucy? Amy replies, she is no one. She is just a maid, but her father shakes his head. That's impossible. A maid cannot be responsible for all this. There must be another reason, and we need to find out what it is. I will do anything to protect my daughter, Amy pleads. Dad, do something quickly. If we don't act now, things will get even worse. We will be left with nothing but regret. Next, we see James in his office, where Frank is standing nearby. James tells Henry, go and call Emma. Henry replies, Emma is not in the office today. She hasn't come in. James calls the servants at home and asks them about Emma. Is Lucy at home? The servant responds, Lucy has been missing since morning. After disconnecting the call, James orders Henry, I need Lucy's location immediately. Find out where she is. Henry nods and leaves, saying, okay, boss. Next, we see Emma. Her mouth is taped shut, and her hands and legs are tied with ropes. She is bound to a chair while two goons stand near her, threatening her. They begin torturing her, hitting her repeatedly. Meanwhile, Henry has tracked Emma's location. He tells James, Lucy's location has been found. She is inside a factory in a deserted area. I have a bad feeling about this. Upon hearing this, James gets up immediately and tells Frank, we need to get there now. At the factory, the goons continue torturing Emma. Just then, James arrives with Henry. The next scene shows Emma lying on a hospital bed. When she regains consciousness, she sees James sitting in front of her and immediately hugs him. Henry, standing nearby, watches with a smile. James reassures her, everything is fine now. Don't worry, Lucy. Emma hugs him again and, with tears in her eyes, says, I was so scared. I thought I was going to die. I thought I would never see you again. James says to Emma, yes, I know. If I had been even a little late, I would never have met you. Maybe I wouldn't have been able to live after that. Emma looks at James and asks, what do you mean? James smiles and says, don't worry, I was just teasing you. Emma then asks, who would have done this to me? James replies, this could be Amy's doing. Emma thinks for a moment and then says, I believe this is my dad's work. James turns to Henry and says, Amy's dad's account should be settled. Henry does not leave immediately. James looks at Lucy and says, Lucy, tell me what is going on. Emma nervously replies, I cannot tell you anything right now. If we do not act quickly and fix everything, a lot of things can go wrong. Next, we see John arriving to pick up his sister, Amy, who was pregnant. He is taking great care of her. Meanwhile, a girl sees them together and misunderstands the situation. When she sees them hugging, she clicks a photo and sends it to John's fiancée. Upon seeing the photo, John's fiancée rushes to the party in anger. When she sees Ava, she grabs her by the neck and shouts, this was happening right under my nose, and I didn't even know. You got pregnant and shamelessly came to my wedding. She then slaps Ava so hard that she falls to the ground. The girls standing with the bride also attack Ava brutally. Despite their cries to stop, John's fiancée refuses to listen and says, you don't even know me. I will make your condition even worse. Ava cries out, I am John's sister. John's fiancée scoffs, I've been in a relationship with him for so long, and I never heard that he has a sister. You are just trying to cover up your mistake. You should disappear. The group of girls continues beating Ava. She pleads with them, can't you see that I am pregnant? Please, at least consider my condition. One of the girls sneers, a mistress deserves this kind of treatment. Bright then orders, drag her to Beck. We will teach her a lesson in front of everyone. Two girls start dragging Ava away. She struggles and begs them to let her go, but they refuse to listen. When the bride arrives at the banquet, her parents ask her what happened. She points at Ava and says, look at her. She is John's mistress, and she is pregnant. Bright's mother exclaims, a mistress? How dare she? She betrayed my daughter. Amy speaks up again, I am not a mistress. I am his sister. But the bride's father kicks Amy in the stomach so hard that she falls to the ground. The guests watch the scene unfold without intervening. Amy writhes in pain, pleading for help. The bride then grabs Amy by the hair and says, you can never take my place. You have to disappear. Amy continues crying in pain. Meanwhile, James is shown rushing to the location, fearing that if he arrives late, something terrible might happen. A girl notices James approaching and quickly runs to inform the bride. James is coming, Bright's mother says, let James handle his brother. It's your wedding day. Don't spoil your mood over this. James won't be pleased if he finds out about all this. The bride quickly hides Ava under the table. When James arrives, she greets him warmly. "Brother, you're here." James looks around suspiciously. The bride asks, "Are you looking for someone?" James notices something unusual on the floor. "What are these marks?" The bride's mother quickly makes an excuse. "A bottle of red wine fell here. The cleaners didn't clean it properly." "Don't worry, I'll have it taken care of." James ignores her and insists, "I am asking again, where is my sister?" He then calls out for Ava. The girls standing nearby begin whispering, realizing that Ava might really be his sister. James orders Henry to search for Ava. Henry looks around and finds her hidden behind the curtain. He calls out, "James, your sister is here." James rushes over and sees Ava in a terrible state. He immediately orders for her to be taken to the hospital. Then, he calls John and tells him to come immediately. James confronts the bride and her family, demanding an explanation for Ava's condition, but they make excuses. The bride says, "It was just a misunderstanding." James, furious, slaps her. When her mother speaks up, he slaps her too. John arrives and asks, "Brother, what is going on here?" James tells him, "Ava is in danger. She might lose her baby." John collapses in tears. James looks at him and says, "You know what you have to do next." John turns to his fiancée and says, "You should have asked me before jumping to conclusions." She pleads, "I made a mistake. Please forgive me." John slaps her and orders the guards to detain everyone involved. "Anyone who just stood and watched is not part of my family anymore." Next, we see Ava in the hospital, crying. Emma, seeing her in distress, scolds her gently, "You don't need to worry. Everyone responsible for this has been punished." She tries to console Ava, telling her to stop crying. James tells Ava, "Please stop crying. I promise you, I will never let anything bad happen to you again." In the next scene, James and Emma are walking together, holding hands. Emma says, "Now all our problems have been solved." James replies, "You should make sure problems never come into your life again." Emma laughs, "How can I do that? I am not in a drama." In her mind, she says, "I love you, James." James also thinks to himself, "I love you, Emma." Emma then says aloud, "I want to tell you a secret." James smiles, "Yes? Tell me." Emma reveals, "I can hear your thoughts." James is surprised. "Really?" Emma nods. "Yes." James places his hands on her shoulders and says, "I also have a secret." Emma asks, "What is it?" James grins, "I can hear your thoughts too." Emma bursts into laughter. "I knew that." James, surprised, asks, since when Emma teases, "Guess it." They both start laughing, and in that moment, they kiss. The drama ends with this scene. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe my channel.